What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host Caleb. If you want to support me, you can now support me on Patreon. If you want more say in what deck techs I do while supporting me, that's the best option. Another option is using that TCGplayer link or just liking, commenting, and subscribing. Another thing I've recently decided I'm doing is trying to be one of the top 10 most followed pages on Moxfield. So if you could help me out with that, that would be amazing. Now let's get into today's deck tech with Korvold. And honestly, he's not as broken as the OG, but he is way more interesting. This guy requires you to build the deck a certain way, and as a brewer, that really tickles my brain and gets me excited about this guy. But I lured you in here with a thumbnail, so let me, go ahead and deliver on that. I said we could get Korvold out on turn 2, and no, we're not using something like Jeweled Lotus or your Mana Crypts, although those would help. We're using something a lot more trash. Garbage. No one likes this card. We're using the Lion Diamond. I like this guy because 1, he's a creature, 2, he is an artifact, so we're already putting 2 counters on Korvold, and then you get to discard your hand, which is normally huge downfall, but in this deck, where Korvold will have haste, it can go ahead and draw you even more cards and make him more massive, because chances are you are discarding more than just a creature and artifact. Maybe you'll have a land in there, possibly an enchantment, because in this deck we just go wide, shotgun, lots of different permanent types. That way we're getting Korvold as big as possible. Now, the way you need to do this to get him out on turn 2 is you need that turn 1 Soul Ring. I know that sucks, but you need Soul Ring into the Lion, and then you can go ahead sack the Lion. Can't talk today, and that'll give you effectively 5 mana, right? 2 for the reducers, and then 3, and then you just tap 2 lands, go ahead, tap that Soul Ring, and you'll actually generate a little extra mana to cast your Korvold on turn 2 and start smashing face, which is exactly the direction I went. Cast Korvold as fast as possible, using stuff like, again, Gold Hound, really good, not as good as the Lion, but still amazing in this deck, and then we're just going to use stuff like Seize the Day to give him extra combat steps, draw a lot of cards, and really kill our opponents fast, because honestly, look at this guy. He looks like he wants to be smashing face, so that's exactly what we're going to do. We do have quite a few alternate win cons in the deck, just in case Korvold dies a lot and gets super expensive, so if you want to see what those are, stick around. If this sounds like a deck tech you want to get into, let's jump into it. Let's start off by talking about how the deck wins, and then we can go through all the fun ways we can get Korvold on the battlefield really fast. First thing we need to do, get Korvold on the battlefield, and cast something like Seize the Day or even Mirage Fury of Akum can be really useful for closing out the game. Extra combat steps with a commander that grows really fast can really start ending players' lives. Jeska's Thrice Reborn is going to be amazing for this as well. As long as he's a 7/7, which happens really fast, he can just dome people in the head for commander damage. You gotta love that. We do also have an Underworld Breach line in the deck using Underworld Breach and Jeska's Will, and then we can use stuff like the Balrog and Greater Good to fill our graveyard, making sure we always have 3 cards to exile to recast our Jeska's Will. This will effectively make us infinite red mana. Not infinite, you can deck yourself with this, but the goal is to obviously win before you deck yourself, and how we win is simple. All we need is Anger in the graveyard, and then something like a Bloodthirster, Zapindrel, or even Xenagos will do the trick, and now whenever Bloodthirster attacks on each of those combats, he's doubling his power. This will definitely dome one player, and then we can use something like Kamal, Heart of Krosa, to animate our lands. Those lands will have Vigilance to take out the other players. It's going to be a super fun way to start killing people, but again, this does take a ton of setup, so I think in a casual deck, this Underworld Breach line is probably okay, because again, you need a ton of setup for this. Another solid way to just flat win the game is just the OG Korvold. We can use this guy plus the Reaver Cleaver. Now we can't use these two in combination to take people out with commander damage since he isn't our commander, but he does still get really massive, and he can start taking people out, especially when you cast something like Seize the Day on him. Atraxa Skitterfang is also another solid way to close out the game, as long as we can give something vigilance, usually our commander, and then have the Bloodthirster on the battlefield. That thing will be able to attack every combat step with the Bloodthirster, so that's also extremely broken. Last but not least, we have some simple win cons like Lizard Blades. This is going to be amazing to throw on our commander. Remember, it is a combat damage trigger, so he will attack, get bigger, and then hit them again. This will not only draw you a lot of cards, but start taking your opponents out quickly. Moving on, let's get Korvold on the battlefield as fast as possible. Diamond Lion. This guy's going to be amazing, giving you a total of 5 mana towards Korvold. 2 because of the artifact and creature cost reductions, and then 3 because it just gives you 3 mana. Remember, you will have to discard your hand, but you're drawing a minimal of 2 cards with Korvold, and you do discard your hand, so the odds that you get a land or enchantment into your graveyard off this is very high. Reckless Barbarian, also super solid. This will give you a total of 3 mana, the creature typing, and then the extra 2 red mana. Goldhound, this one's going to give you a total of 3 mana towards Korvold. 1 because, you know, it gives you 1 mana, and then it is an artifact creature, so we're good there. Tenderwall, another one that gives you 3 mana, right? You get 1 cost reduction because, again, it's a creature, and then you get that 2 red. Glittering Stockpile. I'm still testing this card, but honestly, it performs pretty well. It comes down and just starts getting a lot of those charge counters. Then you can sacrifice it for at least reducing his cost by 1, and then add a bunch of mana to your mana pool. This is one of the grindier ways to get him on the battlefield, but it still works. Wild Cantor, this one's super simple, comes down early, sacks itself, add 1 mana, and then it'll reduce it by 1 because it's a creature. Treasure Map, another grindy one, but get this down turn 2, you start scrying, it's going to smooth out your draws a little bit, and then when you get those 3 treasure tokens, it's going to be super solid to sack those. You'll get a total of 4 mana, the 3 treasure tokens, plus, you know, you sacrificed an artifact, and it's going to be pretty easy to cast Korvold from there. Ragavan comes down early and just starts creating treasure tokens. This is just another way to create treasure tokens to get Korvold out as fast as possible. Fable of the Mirror Breaker, kind of like Ragavan, but works very similarly. It's kind of slow, and then you do have the option to discard some stuff, get it into your graveyard. That way when Korvold does come down, he's going to draw you more cards and get bigger faster, and then you get that backside that can not only copy the things that you sacrifice to get Korvold down, or you can just copy your big bad creatures. Black Market Connections, pretty similar, right? It's just for card advantage early and getting some of those treasure tokens. We don't have a lot of sack outlets in the deck, so the token really doesn't matter, but the card draw and treasure is very notable. Dothy Voidwalker, this one's just super solid. Hopefully we get some ramp in the early game off this guy, and then we can sacrifice him to make sure we can cast Korvold a little early. Moving on to the miscellaneous stuff, we do run Invasion of Ikoria. I like this just to tutor up our key pieces. Maybe we can get a Ragavan down early, or late game we can grab that Bloodthirster. It also does flip into that broken dinosaur that makes your creatures assign combat damage as though they weren't blocked, so you can block them, but again, we're still just going to deal damage straight to the face. Anger, we need that for our, you know, Underworld Breach line. We need our creatures to have haste or they're not going to be able to attack. Eternal Witness just gets anything back from the grave that we need. I also like Fauna Shaman here. She's the perfect toolbox. She can grab that Skitterfang and that Bloodthirster line. That way it's not so, you know, magical Christmas land. Additionally, she can make sure that Anger gets into the graveyard pretty easily and just makes it to where we have access to all the creatures in our library. Marin of Clan Neltoth, not only is she solid because, again, we are sacrificing a lot of creatures, or I should say our creatures just sacrifice themselves because that's how this deck ended up, and then she's pretty solid for just bringing those creatures back for free, and when half of your deck taps or sacrifices themselves for mana, that can be incredibly useful, especially when you lose one of your key pieces. She'll just bring it right back to the battlefield or your hand. Animate Dead, super solid. Korvold, super expensive, so if he dies, we want to be using this to reanimate him. Conduit of Worlds, we run a lot of sack lands in this deck, and Exploration, so having something like Exploration and sack lands is really useful for just generating a ton of mana. It'll make sure you always play your land drops. It's just super busted. Additionally, we do have the ability to cast something from our graveyard once per turn. If Korvold dies, I could see that being a super solid option. Tyrant Guard is just going to be a solid way to protect Korvold in the deck. Korvold 90% of the time will have counters on him, and then all we have to do is sack this guy, and boom, he's got protection, and then he's super easy to get back from the graveyard. Malakir Rebirth is a solid card because it can double as a land early game or late game. It protects Korvold when he gets removed. We have Balaged Recovery and Agadim's Awakening as well. Agadim's Awakening is super solid. One, it can get all of those small creatures from our graveyard onto the battlefield, but additionally, if you notice, we can do something like, I don't know, Xanagos into Bloodthirster into Zapindrel, and we could even grab Kamal, since they all have very differing mana costs. Now, this costs a ton of mana to do, but in a scenario where you're casting this to win the game, I'm assuming we have a ton of mana. And this deck does produce a lot of treasure tokens when we run stuff like the Reaver Cleaver, so it's very possible that we just cast this for a ton, animate all of our bombs, and take everybody out all at once. especially when we have a way to kinda create infinite mana with the Underworld Breach and Jessica's Will line. This scenario stops becoming, you know, Magical Christmas Land and starts becoming a late game win con. Moving on to card draw, we are 100% running the Great Henge. We have a lot of low to the ground creatures that we just cast for value, so being able to draw a card off of that is going to be super solid, and then it does have the ability to tap for mana and gain life, so the Great Henge is just broken in this deck. The Gitrog monster, we have a lot of sack lands, right? So sacrificing the lands, throwing them to the graveyard, that's just going to be added card advantage. Midnight Reaper and Grim Horsepex are going to be amazing because, again, we have a lot of creatures that just enter the battlefield and immediately sacrifice themselves for value. Beast Whisperer is just another solid card we have that draws us cards whenever we cast a creature spell. Misc and Brew is also pretty solid in the deck. Not only can it buff up our Korvold, it also creates that hamster. We can buff up the hamster, sack the hamster, draw cards off the hamster. It is removal, card draw, and it just buffs up our commander. We have to love it. Additionally, it is a planeswalker, so if it goes to our graveyard, we're just putting more counters on Korvold and drawing more cards. Last March of the Ints is another game ender. Korvold is going to be massive, so the fact that we get to cast this, draw a lot of cards, and then throw all of our creatures onto the battlefield, there's definitely a couple scenarios where that wins us the game outright. Moving on to ramp, I put Burgeoning and Exploration in the deck. I just found that I always had extra lands in my hand, so putting them onto the battlefield is going to be solid. Additionally, they are added enchantments, so getting them to our graveyard will just buff Korvold up more, right? Font of Fertility. This is an amazing card because we can play it turn 1, sack it turn 2, and we will ensure that we have an enchantment in our graveyard to, again, start buffing our Korvold up. Ignoble Hierarch is just going to be amazing. Comes down early, taps for anything we want or could need, and then buffs Korvold up a little bit. Clout Unrivaled Ancient, a way to create an insane amount of mana in the deck, because why not? Let's create more mana. Pawn of Ulamog and Pitiless Plunderer. These cards are pretty useful when we're sacrificing all of those creatures. Additionally, I know I keep saying this, but for the Underworld Breach line and sacrificing the Balrog, you're just getting more added mana off of that, so that's going to be pretty awesome. Secure Tribelder and Shigeki Jukai Visionary. These are going to be really good early game, and Shigeki does double as an enchantment, so that's going to be more solid. Tireless Provisioner is also super solid. I've noticed that getting this down early can amount to a very fast Korvold. The only problem is you might not have that much permanent types in your graveyard, so it might be a very small Korvold that doesn't draw you very many cards, but it's still going to be amazing in the deck. And last but not least, we do run Soul Ring. Moving on to interaction, we have to protect our Korvold, so using something like Tybalt's Trickery, Deflecting Swat, and Bolt Bend are going to be very solid options for that. I like Haywire Might. Haywire Might's going to be a super solid way to get an artifact creature into our graveyard. That way we can, again, start buffing up our Korvold. Binding the Old Gods, another solid removal piece that makes sure that we end up with an enchantment in our graveyard. It also does ramp us a bit. It's honestly super solid. Beast Within gets rid of any permanent that's causing us issues. Assassin's Trophy's also amazing at doing that. Bane of Progress is just going to make sure none of the artifacts and enchantment decks are running away with the game. And then we have our board wipes with Toxic Deluge, Mandate of Abaddon, because again, Korvold will be massive, and Blasphemous Act. This is going to be super solid. If a token strat just takes over the game early game, we can run this out and then cast our Korvold, and we'll be pretty good. That's going to do it for the deck tech, guys. Hey, if you made it this long, you're an absolute legend. I put some extra work into this guy, and I think we ended up with a pretty solid deck list. So again, thank you for watching. Don't forget to follow me on Moxfield. I hope this helps you in your deck building endeavors, and I will see you in the next one.